All right. Good afternoon, everyone. This is our community lunch and learn for May, and I'm Jillian Graber, Executive Director of Protect PT. And today we have Dr. John Stolz with us. Hi, John.
How you doing?
Good. And we have another guest planned as well, but she is not here yet. So we're going to go ahead and get started anyway. That's why we were just a few minutes late today. So we apologize for that. But, this is going to work out because Dr. Stolz really has a lot of the content for, in a presentation. And we can talk and work, independently, and we'll have Teresa come in when she gets here. Hopefully that works out well for everybody. So if you don't know, this is Dr. John Stolz. He is a professor in the Department of Biological Sciences and director of the Center for Environmental Research and Education at Duquesne University. He received his Bachelor's of Science in Biology at Fordham University and PhD at Boston University, Microbiology, Ecology, and Evolution. Dr. Stolz was an NSF postdoctoral fellowship in plant biology in the biochemistry department at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. His main research interests are in microbial ecology and evolution and microbial metabolism. I should have looked at this.
I mean, if you want, I could talk. No.
And metals. Yeah, metals and metalloids, including arsenic, selenium, and nitrate. Water quality impacts of unconventional natural gas extraction. Dr. Stolz has published 96 journal articles. That's a lot, and 44 book chapters, and author edited 3 books. So you've got quite an impressive resume. I would say you're one of our experts that we go to with anything having to do with water quality, and especially with oil and gas constituents. And you've been on our lunch and learn before, talking about some of the other waste issues. And so we're going to talk about a really unique waste issue today, how these new bills that are being proposed in Ohio and PA expose you as individuals watching this YouTube to radioactive oil and gas waste. And so our goal today is really to bring awareness to how oil and gas waste can get into your home. We are also hoping to have on Teresa Mills. She has been for over 20 years a grassroots leader to help communities find their voice, analyze data, and develop strategic plans. She began her activism career by shutting down the Columbus incinerator, which was polluting her neighborhood, and later defined as the largest emitter of dioxin in the country. Teresa also founded the Buckeye Environmental Network, which is a statewide coalition grassroots focus groups, and she works with the Center for Health, Environment, and Justice, better known as CHEJ, to train assistant grassroots leaders across the country, and coordinates the CHEJ grant program, which we at Protect PT have received 2 of the grants from CHEJ, and we're really thankful for their program. So now that the bios are done, let's kind of get started with the nitty-gritty of why we're here today. And so we have our presentation, and John, just let me know if for some reason you need me to change the slides here. We've got them right here in the center, and I'll try to make them a little bigger when you're speaking. But tell us a little bit about, what is AquaSelena, because
Okay, yeah, if you can make that pretty big. So just a further elaboration on my background. I have a combined biology and geology, and the systems that I've worked on traditionally have actually been in what you would consider extreme environments with high salts and brines. So this kind of stuff, as far as oil and gas brines, is not new to me. And that's why it's one of those things where you say, well, wait a minute, they're allowing this. And it's just, and then of course there's the issue of the science itself, and sometimes it does get complicated. That's why, Jillian, I'm really glad that you're having this lunch and learn, because I want to hear the questions. People probably don't know much about radioactivity. If you're my age or older, you probably grew up with Godzilla and all these crazy science fiction movies. I think the Turner Movie Classic Channel just had them on about these giant ants in the Nevada desert because of radiation. So there's a lot of misinformation about that. But here, this was my opening slide, the lunch and learn. This is the product that we're talking about. This is a product from oil and gas waste. And unfortunately, people are trying to draw a line difference between conventional and unconventional oil and gas. Truth be told, the only difference really is money and volume. So in other words, what I mean by that is that it costs you about $4 to $7 million to put in a frack well, and you use 10 million gallons of fluids and probably, and thousands of pounds of propellant. You generate millions of pounds of drill cuttings, as opposed to the conventional stuff where the volumes are much lower. But the point is that both the salts and toxins in the produced water from these operations are the same. So they have the same constituents. They have high salts. They also have heavy metals. They have arsenic. They have chromium. And they have radioactive elements, including and primarily radium. And so when you make stuff from these products, you from the produced water, you have to be very careful that you remove the bad stuff. And so now we can look at what this AquaSelena, and if you look very carefully, it says kills ice. And the company that makes it is called Nature's Own. Well, it sounds crunchy granola, right? Oh, look, 70% less corrosive than rock salt. I don't know where they got that information from. Safe for the environment and pets, and yet that's on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side, it says keep away from children. Well, I know some people that love their pets more than their kids, okay? But the reality is that doesn't make sense. And then if you look at the back, which is on the right-hand side, it says caution, okay? Dilution may cause slippery conditions. It says may be mildly irritating for the skin and eyes, okay? If swallowed, contact a physician immediately. Well, those are the precautions, but what's the main ingredient? The main ingredient is ancient seawater. Okay, what is that? Well, you're thinking, oh, maybe it's just, you wouldn't drink, you go to the North Shore or whatever, or Atlantic City or North Carolina Shore, whatever. You wouldn't want to drink seawater, right? I mean, you can't. Well, anyway, the bottom line is this stuff is not. It's a toxic brine because it's been sitting in the rocks for millions of years, and they're bringing it up. Even conventional has been around for millions of years. Okay, so if we can have the next slide. So it's not ancient seawater. It's material that's been produced by oil and gas waste.
Okay.
So the other thing is about radiation. I mentioned that it had radon, and maybe we want to skip this one and we'll go back to it because I think that according to your little thing, keep going.
All right.
Okay, here, this is the good one. Okay, so is it ancient seawater? Well, if you look at this slide, you can see that, and I'm going to use my own. I've got my own things here so I can read it a little easier. Okay. This stuff has all the components of oil and gas waste. So it's got high chloride, it's got high bromide, which is kind of interesting. As I said, it's got chromium, so all the things in red there is bad because it means that it's above what is allowable in drinking water. Okay. The other important thing is it's got radium-226 and radium-228. So it's radioactive. So not only does it have all these different toxins in it, including arsenic and chromium, but it also has radioactivity. Now, a little side about the bromide. Why is bromide such an issue, especially with oil and gas waste? Is because if it gets into your source of drinking water, say your streams, rivers, or even your aquifers and wells, that bromide is going to combine with the chlorine when they're making your drinking water, and it forms a toxic cancer-causing chemical called trihalomethane. And this is chloroform and bromoform. So the point is, you don't want bromide in your source water for your drinking water. So what happens with this? It's a de-icer. You're putting it on the roads, and it washes off, gets into in your local streams and rivers, and eventually into your groundwater. And guess what? It shows up in your water that's being used to make your drinking water if you're on a public system. All right. So that's a problem there. And we've had this issue in Pennsylvania for years, because at a time they were allowed to, this produced water was getting directly brought to wastewater treatment plants for dilution, but it was causing hell downstream with the drinking water facilities because they were no longer in compliance with the EPA for these cancer-causing disinfectant byproducts in their drinking water process. So that's just about the chemistry. So the bottom line is, based on my analysis of this actual product, it's not ancient seawater, but it's oil and gas waste. So then now, yeah.
I have a question, John. So where did you find this? Where can people buy this product?
This container was bought in 2018 from a Lowe's in Ohio.
Okay. So can people go to Lowe's right now and buy it?
Right now, I did honestly check yesterday, and it says out of stock.
Okay.
So whether or not it's because we're now well into late spring and early summer, they may not be stocking it, but you currently can't get it at Lowe's in Ohio because it's out of stock.
Okay. And I think that was one of the points of us kind of doing this lunch and learn today, was to bring awareness to the fact that people can actually buy oil and gas waste, is essentially what you're buying, right?
Yeah.
In the store, in Lowe's.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure we hit that point home to folks.
So now let's go back to that second slide, because I did mention about the radium, and there's both radium 226 and 228, but we want to focus on the 226. So both of those elements are radioactive. 228 has a decay life of about several days, whereas radium 226 has a half-life of 1,600 years. So now we're going to get a little technical, but it's important. And what they mean by half-life is, just think of it, you have a you have a pizza, and the first half-life is you cut that pizza in half. So now you got half a pie, right? Mm-hmm. The second half-life, the pie doesn't disappear. No, you cut that half in half. Mm-hmm. So now you're down to a quarter. And the third half-life is you cut that quarter again, and you're in eighths, and then 16ths, and 32nds, and you keep going. So the whole point is the radioactivity is still there. So that's number one. Number two is that in this particular case, and on the left-hand side of that slide, you can see all these little buttons, if you will, and it says radium, and that's in like kind of yellowish color, and then below that, that's radon. And radon is radioactive. And then the one below that is polonium. And polonium is radioactive. And that decays to a lead product that is also radioactive. So now imagine this, your container of AquaSelena is sitting on your shelf, and it's sealed up. And over the days and months, that radium 226 is decaying to these other, what we call daughter products. And guess what? It's getting hotter, because each one of those is decaying into other products and releasing radiation or radioactive decay products. Okay, and we can go into that a little bit more if you want, because that's also important. because there's an argument, well, there's as much radioactivity in your banana as there is in this product. And technically that's correct. But again, going back to the decay products and what it decays to, your banana has a thing called potassium 40, and that decays to calcium and argon, which are both non-radioactive. So your banana sitting on your counter over the days, weeks, and well, maybe months. I don't think it'll last that long. But the point is, it's getting cooler. Okay, the radioactive decay is making it less hot. Conversely, your AquaSelena, because it's radium as the starting material, is getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And then the other thing is, and if you go to my third, or actually the sixth slide, that because
This one?
no, the next one.
The next one. This
Yeah.
guy?
Okay. So what am I doing here? So I have this machine in my lab that's an alpha detector. So it sniffs out alpha decay particles, which is part of the decay. It's what certain radioactive materials decay to. And radon is an alpha emitter as well. So this thing is detecting the presence of radon gas in the product. So what I've done, and that the machine there, I'd like to point to it right now. That black machine on the left there has a hose, and that hose is going into the airspace above the product. And I've had that container at that point, it had been sealed up for about 3 months. And then I put the tube in. And it detected as much as 145 picocuries per liter of radon 222. So that's my point, that not only does it break down to these different products, but the products themselves are radioactive. So the material with radium in it is becoming hotter and hotter and hotter. Now imagine you're at a warehouse in Lowe's and you've got all these containers sitting on the shelf, getting hotter and hotter and hotter. You're in a DOT facility with barrels of de-icer sitting around, getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And how do we know this? Well, again, that decay scheme that I showed earlier is from a paper that was published in 2014 by a group that actually studied the decay of produced water from wells and showed, for instance, if you have a Marcellus well, and granted that's unconventional, but nevertheless, it's that brine. They sealed it up for 2 weeks, and it was 5 times as hot after 2 weeks as when they started.
So people could have this in their home. They could have this sitting on their shelf, maybe in their garage. And what would happen if you were to open this up after it's sitting for a while? What would happen to the person opening it up?
Well, that again, you probably wouldn't think about it, but and then honestly, what would a big puff of radon do? I don't know,
Okay.
and what the health risk is. But the point is that all the problems with the waste from oil and gas activities, comes home to your shelf in your garage or your and this is the shocking thing, that it turns out that the industry itself has known about this problem for years, for decades. I just read a book, it's called Crude Justice. It's about a lawyer from Louisiana who back in 1989 was prosecuting oil companies down in Mississippi and Louisiana because they were shutting down contractors because their facilities were radioactive because of the pipes. And again, this is something that the industry has known for years, and they figured out legislatively. They're exempt from RCRA and CERCLA, which is the Superfund program. They're exempt from the State Safe Drinking Water Act. And now the states, both Pennsylvania and Ohio, are trying to make it even more so for these products because they're producing so much waste. And it doesn't matter if it's unconventional or conventional. And again, they'll say, oh, well, this is conventional waste.
Right.
Well, why do they have to do this now? Well, because the unconventional guys are taking up as all the other alternatives. So they still have to figure out a way to get rid of the waste.
So I think just to kind of go back a little bit,
Yep.
you know, you had talked about you're not sure what the health impacts are
Right.
or would be. We do know what the health impacts of being exposed to radon are.
Mhm.
We do know that radon, you know, when I guess exposed in open air will dissipate, right? But when if you, let's say you had this in your basement or garage, and you open it up and you don't have a way for that radon gas to go somewhere, it's just exposing you to levels of radon. And we do know that radon causes lung cancer. There are things that we do know about radon. We also know that radon, it is a colorless, odorless gas that is naturally occurring in the earth. And we remediate these things in our homes. When we buy homes, we remediate radon, because it is one of the leading causes of lung cancer. And we in Pennsylvania already have a high level of radon.
Right.
But John, what it boils down to is oil and gas waste is being repurposed as this product called Aqua Salina that you can buy on the shelf at Lowe's, or other potential hardware stores. And it contains radioactive materials. It contains, then when it sits on your shelf, those things get worse. Just kind of boiling it down. And you mentioned something about DOTs, and I wanted to kind of go back and say, so DOTs meaning Department of Transportation. So they are
Right. So
putting this on the road.
500,000 gallons of this material was spread on roads in Ohio back, I think, in either 18 or 19. So again, the bottom line is you don't want to get this stuff in your groundwater. You don't want to get this stuff building up because, it was interesting. And now that I've been, reintroduced to this stuff, you notice things. So I was driving into work this past winter, and it was a dry day. We'd had a bunch of snow and whatnot, and on the highway you could see this mist or dust cloud of salt. Now, if it's just magnesium chloride, calcium chloride, and sodium chloride, yeah, it's a little salty, but those things are naturally, they're actually nutrients. You need calcium, you need magnesium. But imagine now if it's got arsenic in it. Imagine if it's got radium in it. And you're breathing this in as you're driving around. It's accumulating on your car. When you get home and you wash the car for the first time, it's running down your driveway. And then if you use the product at home, you're spraying it on your driveway. You're spraying it on your sidewalk. And you're not doing a single application. You're applying more and more and more. And it's going to wind up sticking around. And that's the thing about radium. And if you go to that other slide,
Which one?
let's see the one right, three above that one. This was a paper. Yeah, this is a paper that was done by a group from Penn State, I believe. Or is that? Yeah. And it's basically explaining that in 2018 that they were seeing residuals of some of the activities that were going on in 2009 and 2010 and 2012, that it was building up in the sediments of our streams and rivers, because radium has a propensity to stick to stuff. And that's why the scale from the oil and gas operations is so radioactive, is because the radium is attracted to the scale. And so it builds up in the pipes, it builds up on the equipment and things like that. So again, the behavior of this really nasty element, I'm sure you're all familiar with the radium girls.
Yeah.
Okay, so they used to paint the watch handles and things like that, and they wound up with horrible cancers.
Yeah.
Because they didn't realize that the radium was radioactive and it was causing them to get sick.
Yeah. That's
So, again, and then the other thing is, and I have no clue, and I'm not trying to scare people, but the polonium-210, which is a breakdown product or decay product of the radium, is what the Russians used to knock off expatriates. Okay, it's very toxic and radioactive.
Wow.
So again, they're not putting polonium in the product to begin with, but you sit it on the shelf for a certain amount of time, and the polonium's going to build up.
Mm-hmm. And so
So
I'm going to go back to the slide that shows the bottle because I think it's important for people
yeah,
to know what it looks like. This is Aqua Salina. And so one of the things that we wanted to talk about today was how this product is going to be more or going to be able to be more widely used. And so I know that there's a couple different pieces of legislation or one in particular in Ohio. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, John, and kind of what you found reading through that legislation?
yeah, I was really surprised because again, uh, just to reiterate, especially about radioactivity,
Mhm.
there's three major types of decay. There's alpha, beta, and gamma. And gamma is just ionizing radiation. Okay. And it's high energy and it goes right through you, but it can cause cancers and health issues. Um, Beta is either a positron or an electron. So it's high energy, but it has, low mass, but it can penetrate skin, but it also has health uh, problems. Alpha is the biggest one. It's actually a helium nucleus. Again, this is all technical stuff, right? But it's a particle and it's stopped by skin. I'm sorry, the beta, you need aluminum foil. Anyway, the alpha, it's stopped by your skin. But both the radon and the radium are alpha emitters, and they're gamma emitters as well. So they generate two types of radiation. But when you breathe in radon, that decays inside your lungs and it bombards your lungs with alpha particles. And that's what causes the lung cancer.
Okay.
So you got alpha, beta, and gamma. And then the other thing is the different decay products. So this new legislation is saying that they're going to allow in products like AquaSelena to have upwards of 20,000 picocuries per liter of radium 226.
Wow.
And that they're going to allow it to have upwards of 5 milligrams per liter of arsenic. The drinking water standard is 10 micrograms per liter, not 5 milligrams, 10 micrograms. So almost 1,000 times less. So I wondered, where did they get that 20,000 picocuries from? Well, if you look at nuclear regulatory regulations for nuclear power plants, they can discharge upwards of 20,000 picocuries per liter of tritium, okay, which is basically hot hydrogen, H3, okay? But that decays to helium. So again, like your banana, you let tritium decay and it becomes an inert gas, okay? So radium is just going to decay into other bad things. And so where they got this number of 20,000, I have no idea. And they allow other things in there as well that just the numbers are off the scale.
Okay. And I've popped the document. It's quite an extensively long document. It's 22 pages, but this is available on our website. Mary's going to pop in the chat for everybody so folks can go to the website and look at it. We do have a question from someone in the audience. Do you think that they might have changed the branding on AquaSelena? Do you think they're going to change the branding if folks start learning about this this issue with the radium?
No, I mean, unless they're required to post the ingredients and not call it ancient seawater. Okay, but that has to be legislated.
Okay. And
All
so
right,
just
that's yeah.
and just so I'm clear, because I'm learning about this too. So the legislation that's happening now, it's going to make it easier for the industry to, or for this Aqua Salina to sell this product, correct?
Mhm.
And it's going to
Yeah.
make it easier for them to sell it, what, all over the United States? Will they be able to sell it
Well,
everywhere?
no, but it again, there's a couple of sets of legislation.
Okay.
In Ohio, it's specifically for these products,
Okay.
right? Because they call it beneficial use.
Okay.
So it's going to allow, and again, it's strictly conventional. And same thing in Pennsylvania, it's strictly conventional waste. But in Pennsylvania, they're just using it directly for road brining.
Okay. Yeah.
And again, it's just, oh, it's a beneficial use. Yeah, sure, but you're putting this toxic material into the environment. And we have data on brines from conventional wells in Venango County.
Hmm.
And once again, it's high in bromide, it has radium in it, and this is the same stuff that they're saying it's okay to put on the roads. And so,
Yeah, and I'm wondering where, so kind of where everything is. I know that one of our partners, and someone we've had actually as a guest speaker on our Lunch and Learn, Karen Faraday, they're doing another event right now. But I know that they were talking today about kind of where everything is, and it seems like it's moving along through the legislation in Pennsylvania. And I'm going to try to pull up the information for folks so they know, because we want to let people know about these bills, and so they can contact their representatives, and talk about this. And we've made it easy for you guys to do that. We have a page. It's just protectbt.org/OG waste bills, and we put up some forms on there. So whether you live in Pennsylvania or Ohio, you will be able to contact your legislator and let them know about some of the bills. And I know we've got two different things going on in Pennsylvania. The one is the road spreading. The other one is some legislation that's now being proposed by Representative Sarah Enamorado and Senator Katie Muth, they're asking for people to close the waste loophole, because there is this really terrible waste loophole. And you had mentioned this before, RCRA. And what can you tell people what RCRA stands for?
oh no.
It's the Resource Recovery Act or something like that. I can't remember what RCRA stands for, but basically it's this legislation that exists that allows oil and gas waste to be classified as residual waste and not as toxic waste or radioactive waste. And I think that that's important for people to know, because like me, learning about this for the first time, I didn't know what RCRA was. I didn't know what AquaSelena was and why it was bad. And so that's why we're trying to do this type of educational programming, so people know like what those things mean. And so this in Pennsylvania, HB 1144 will allow for road spreading of drilling waste and roll back the rules for some of the conventional drilling. So this has made it through the second consideration yesterday, it looks like, and was sent to appropriations. A floor vote could come at any time. So what we're saying is call your PA state reps today and ask them to vote no on HB 1144. And then if you're in Ohio, there's a lot of information on our website. This document that I'm putting up here, I know it's very small, and it's hard to read, but you can read the whole thing. It's 22 pages. You can read the whole thing and all about what's going on in Ohio on our website as well. And so this is why, we wanted to partner with John and Teresa today to give folks this information so you had it and so you could take action. So we're asking folks to take action and, call your representative, call your senator, let them know that oil and gas waste belongs in processing facilities that can accept radioactive toxic waste, because at the end of the day, that's what we're talking about. John, would you say that that's correct? That oil and gas waste is radioactive and toxic?
Yes, and as I said, the industry has known it for years.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, it's well documented in the book Crude Justice. I met the lawyer Stuart H. Smith, who wrote the book, and he's an amazing individual. But this is where I draw the line. It's like you've known about this,
Yeah.
and instead of dealing with it, you've dealt with it through legislation. So CERCLA stands for Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act, also known as Superfund. But I cheated. I looked it up online. And you were right. You were spot on with what RCRA is. But again, these were bills, legislation at the federal level that were passed to protect human people. I mean, human health and the environment. And it's just that at this point, and then as I said, there's no real difference in my mind between conventional and unconventional. And we could go and have a whole nother lunch and learn on just what the difference is. But essentially, it's just a matter of volume and the amount of waste that's produced, and of course the amount of gas as well. But they're basically drilling into similar formations. And in fact, the gas in conventional wells came from shales.
Yeah. And why,
So
so they're classifying this as, what, ancient seawater. And that's because oil and gas, the shale formation is made up of an ancient seabed. And that's where all the little fossils are that create the natural gas, or the oil and gas. And so the water that goes through that during the fracking process, and when you say conventional versus unconventional, so I think people should understand that conventional wells are typically more shallow wells, so they go into different types of shale formations, or different types of rock formations, and
right.
they are typically vertical, so they just drill straight down. But they are fracked, and when we say fracked, we're talking about hydraulic fracturing. So hydraulic meaning water, fracturing meaning they fracture the rock to release that gas, and they use things like proppants. And I didn't know any of this until I started working on this type of work. But proppant just means that it's some type of material that can prop open, or keep open that fissure, to be able to let the gas release. And so what comes up not only is what goes down, so water, chemicals, sand is all mixed together and shoved down the hole at extreme high pressure. But what comes up is water, chemicals, sands, and what's down there, what's been down underneath the earth for billions of years, right, John?
Millions.
Millions.
Most of these things, yeah, I'm almost done with the book.
Okay.
So now I'm actually working on a table with all the formations in the United States. Most of them are anywhere from Devonian to Pennsylvanian in age. So it's within the last 500 million years.
Okay.
But no, I mean, I again, this, I don't want to say I feel sorry for the conventional industry, but honestly, they were one of the first casualties when the unconventional industry took hold in the tri-state area. We've looked at the permits. Back in 2004, there were over 5,000 permits for conventional wells that were permitted in Pennsylvania. By 2009, it was down to almost nothing because they couldn't compete. And when you're going to lease your land, are you going to get $7 an acre from a conventional guy, or are you going to get $1,000 from an unconventional driller.
Well,
And
because
that's,
yeah, because the money that people make with leasing really depends on how much gas comes up, right? So you'd think that the further they're drilling, the more that they're drilling, or I should say the longer lateral versus the shallow well that's going to produce more gas, correct?
yeah. Well, and that's the other thing. A conventional well will last decades. An unconventional well, and again, my group has looked at the data. We've gotten DEP data, we've got industry data. The industry itself, when they're doing the promotionals, they're open to showing what we call these decline curves.
Mm-hmm.
An unconventional well will produce the lion's share of what it's going to produce in its lifetime within 5 years. So they produce most of the gas within the first 3 years to 5 years. By 10 years, it's a mere trickle. Okay. And so, of course, this is what drove the boom, that there was all this gas, and of course, the prices plummeted. But the other important thing to realize is that, again, with the produced water from the wells themselves, that there is stuff down there to begin with. It's known as formation water, and that mixes with the fracking fluids, and that these wells are going to, they may produce a little gas over the years, but they're still also going to be producing this produced water.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, we have data from a number of samples where we've actually been able to look at, what comes back initially and then what comes back hundreds of barrels later.
Yeah.
And this stuff gets saltier and saltier and saltier over the years. And just, that's the thing. And it's going to continue to produce. Now, the industry so far has been able to keep on top of things because they use the produced water from older wells to frack new wells. But again, we just had a downturn with COVID and, other things, other market forces. And so now, those old wells are still producing all this waste, and there's nowhere to put it because they're not drilling as many new wells. And so, again, this is something that it's going to be with us for decades. I'm hoping it's not going to be like mine drainage.
Yeah.
When you look at what's happened with the coal industry in these states and all the mine drainage we have, are we going to have what I like to see is PW? Instead of AMD, we'll have PW, which is produced water, because these wells are going to continue. And until they are properly plugged, they're going to continue to be a source of this material.
And so, we have some comments in the chat. One comment from Patricia: Supreme Court of PA does not know what they are protecting by the Constitution. And what do you want us to do, Supreme Court of PA? So I guess, and today we're not really talking about the Supreme Court, but I think that from a legislative standpoint, it's kind of what we're talking about today. There are actions that people can take to, at least at a legislative, level, try to get some awareness about, these really bad bills that are coming down, and really bring awareness to the good ones, the ones like, Senator Katie Muth and Representative Sarah Innamorato just proposed some of these really this bill to close this waste loophole. It's actually, I think, a series of bills. So, I think it's important to know about this stuff. It's important to know what you're bringing home from the hardware store. It's important to know what's sitting on the shelves of your garage, what you're going to put on your front, your front walkway, or your driveway, because then you're essentially putting it on your feet. And I know that there are folks that don't wear shoes in the house, but there's a lot of people that do wear their shoes in the house. And if it's going to get on your shoes, then it's going to get in your house. And your pet's going to be exposed to it, your kid's going to be exposed to it. So there's all kinds of pathways for exposure to this stuff.
Well, and again, I know, and he's already sued a couple of people in Ohio to keep their mouth shut. but the full intent of the person who owns this business is to basically sell it to the departments of transportation in the different states.
Is that because of volume? Like they can sell a lot?
Volume. Oh yeah, yeah. He just wants to get just as much volume as possible.
So it could be
So
on public roads, like
yeah,
any public road, any DOT, any Department of Transportation that wants to use this as a way. And I'm betting it's probably pretty cheap because essentially they're just like taking waste and making it into a different product. So, how do you know how expensive this stuff is, John?
oh, I forget. I don't know. Was it $20 or something for the bottle? I'm not sure. I forget. Again, it was 2018 now. I mean, this is the crazy thing,
Yeah.
and it's still there. I mean, it's still happening. And the other thing is the colors changed. So I don't know what's going on with that, but again, it just continues to to decay away and get hotter.
Yeah, yeah. So
So
if you see this in a hardware store, what could be some things that other people could say or other people could do? Because I know when I was talking to Teresa, and I wish she would have been able to be here today with us, but when I was talking to her, they wrote a letter to Lowe's and let them know that this was on their shelf, and then it did come off the shelf, but it looks like it's still in their stock. So maybe that's why you can't get it
yeah.
Lowe's right now. But I would think that awareness to the person that's selling it, because if they're selling it, could there be some type of liability for them selling it? Like if somebody gets sick from this stuff?
Well, again, I mean, you raise another question because in Europe they have their regulations are called REACH,
Mm-hmm.
but here we have TSCA, which is the toxic inventory, and it's how we deal with toxic products. But the onus is primarily on the user. It's not on the company. It's not. And the other interesting thing is if you put the next slide on after that one,
Mm-hmm.
so I get to get all the slides. No, the next. Let's see now. Two. I guess two more. Next one. This next one.
That
Yeah.
we didn't really
So
this.
yeah, we didn't talk about this. This is data from the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. And what was interesting about that for them is you can see that they came from different places, and the hottest one was from a hardware store. And apparently, the product is made in several different facilities, and they also noticed that in their analysis that the different facilities, the product was different. In other words, the levels of radium at the end of the processing was different. Some was hotter than others. So that raises a question of even quality assurance and what actually are they doing to produce this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But and again, this whole thing has been challenged. We use the standard EPA 21 ingrowth experiment, and this other thing that I showed you with the radon detector, that's real-time alpha spectroscopy. So it's real.
A lot of sciencey words that
Well,
mean.
well, no, I mean that there's been arguments about, so here's the thing. How would you typically know that this was radioactive? Oh, you take a Geiger counter and hold it next to it. No, that's not how you do it.
Right.
Okay. All right. There are methods that, and when you ask, these waste haulers today, how do you know how hot your truck is? I stand, and this is a quote, 6 inches from the side of the truck with a handheld Geiger counter.
So that's how they know if they're carrying oil, if they're carrying radioactive waste.
How hot their oil and gas waste is inside the truck.
So
Okay.
what?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for somebody like that doesn't know why that's problematic, can you kind of go through, why that wouldn't pick up potential radiation that's in the truck?
Because it can, dissipate very quickly. Okay. 1 over R squared. But no, what you really have to do is take a sample and you incubate it, and you let the products, decay, and that's when you measure it. And so the really high end stuff is 21 days. But you're not going to do that if you're working at a waste treatment plant, or you're not going to do it at the landfills. They have these gamma detectors, but they just pull the roll off for the dumpster in, and they measure it from a distance.
Okay.
And you don't know if there's a hot spot or whatever. And again, it's just, and the stuff accumulates.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And
You
is
know,
this,
and
yeah,
yeah.
go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, it's just we have better ways and more accurate ways of measuring for this stuff. And it just seems that and you've talked to the folks at the DEP, and you've heard what they've had to say. Oh, it's not a problem. You
Yeah.
know,
We were on a
we
call together. We were on a
my
call.
group, I took a sample of from that waste treatment plant that was treating the leachate from the landfill that was taking oil and gas waste, and their sludges, the dried sludges at the end of their treatment process, had radium 226 and 228 in it. So we know that it accumulated in that facility, and that's the wastewater facility that's being used by the wonderful people of Bell Vernon.
Yeah. So
And they have no clue.
So just to kind of tell everybody, when you're saying sludge, so when they process the water at the water treatment facility, they have waste from that process, and the waste from that process is a sludge. And when you tested the sludge, it was radioactive.
It was radioactive. Yeah.
Just want to make sure people kind of understand, because it there's a lot to really think about here, and a lot of it's scientific, and it's if you don't know a lot about science or don't have a science background, it's really hard to understand. So it's definitely something that that it takes a learning curve. But when we were on a call, you and I were on a call with with some folks from the DEP, and one of the things that did not surprise me, but at the same time was a little telling as far as like their mentality with how to solve these problems. The gentleman said in so many words, the solution to pollution is dilution. And I think that is telling of how the regulatory agency that oversees this industry is thinking about how to deal with this really really real problem, and this really toxic problem that's could really leave people in Pennsylvania and Ohio and West Virginia and other states in a real bad position health wise. So they're not thinking about public health when they're making these decisions. They're thinking about how can we solve this problem of getting rid of this waste that we don't know what to do with.
Well, it's not even knowing what to do with the waste. It's doing it in a cost-effective manner. And at this point, I've over the years now have seen a variety of different methods. Some of them work, some of them don't. And even those that work, there's a cavalier approach to the radioactivity, because they can't see it, they can't smell it, they can't taste it. And yet, over time, this stuff builds up. And that's so for instance, that waste treatment plant was processing anywhere from 100 to 300,000 gallons of leachate from the landfill per day.
Mm-hmm.
And so even if it were a little smidgen of radium per gallon, the sheer volume over every 365 days of the year, and then the fact that certain processes actually enrich for the things, and as I said, that radium likes to stick to stuff, that suddenly something that wasn't or didn't appear to be radioactive now is, because the radium is accumulated over time.
Okay.
So I even wonder about where how many years has these processing facilities that make AquaSelena been around? And has anybody gone in there and tested for radioactivity? Because obviously, those levels should have increased over time as some of the radium actually, doesn't make it into the final product. It winds up on the floor. It winds up in the vats and things like that. And, they closed a brine facility up in Josephine, on Blacklick Creek is now permanently damaged with high levels of radioactivity. And the plant itself was shut down because, the tanks that they were holding this stuff in are now incredibly hot. I don't know whatever happened to them,
Yeah.
but it was clear that that they hadn't completely underestimated the buildup of the radioactivity.
So, oh gosh, so many questions. So, what have there been any studies or anybody come out with anything on the workers that worked in these facilities?
Well, again, and what, so this lawyer from Louisiana actually was representing a number of different oil workers. And the story starts off with guys they had what they call a scale or descaling operation, where they would get the pipes from the oil field and they would scrape out all the stuff that had precipitated and encrusted the pipes, and that's where the radium was. And so their whole facility, all the dust was radioactive.
Wow.
And and then they were bringing it home, and their families were getting, exposed. And one of the women, one of the family members, had they had fragile bone syndrome.
Okay.
Because radium is a bone seeker.
Yeah.
Okay. And so anyway, so there are examples in which oil field workers have been, not, I think, to the extent it should be, but again, that's one of the reasons why they're doing this health study at Pitt now, because of the Canonsburg issue.
Yeah, but I would think that the healthcare, the oil and gas workers, when you go into that field, you potentially would go into the field understanding that this is the nature of the business that you're in. But I'm not sure that the people that would be working in one of these facilities making this Aqua Salina or putting into bottles and and manufacturing it, I don't how do they know? Because I think that's part of the problem is the transparency of what they're actually doing. And
No, and again, this book, I'm basing some new revelations because of the book. But no, seriously, even in the orientation sessions for these workers, it was never mentioned.
yeah,
It was never brought up. So even oil field workers don't know how much they're being exposed to. And we're dealing with people now that have been doing this for over a decade in this region that are finally stepping forward and providing some, providing samples, providing testimony and things like that, just saying, I've started having issues with my teeth. I've started having this, that, the other thing. And and these are indications of long-term exposure to low levels of radioactivity.
yeah,
So again, it's something that, there's just like coal workers, it's part of the culture. The average person isn't going to be your roustabout.
yeah,
But again, it's part of the culture. They take it. They make good money, but they don't want to be bothered with the details in many cases until they do wind up getting sick.
yeah,
So and then it's buried.
yeah,
And I've been involved with a couple of cases not regarding health but environmental contamination, and those settlements at the end are sealed.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
I've that's the nature of their business. They lawyer up, and the facts are hard to come out.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you, John, for being on today. And I know that we missed Teresa. That's a shame because she has a
Oh,
lot.
we'll have to find out where she is.
I know, we'll have to find out what happened. I did pop a note in the chat about another lunch and learn that you might want to check out if you're watching this and wondering, why the industry would be motivated to put people at risk, by having this product. And really it all comes down to money, and it comes down to, this is the cheapest way, in some cases, to get rid of the waste. And we know this lunch and learn I put up in the chat was all about the financial, really the financial issues going on in the industry right now. And so I think it's something that is tied to this issue, and that's kind of the nature of the beast here, where we have a lot of issues that are really tied to each other with our luncheon. Everybody for joining us today and watching our lunch and learn. I want to thank Dr. John Stolz for joining us with all his knowledge, and we want to mention next month, in the month of June, our lunch and learn is going to be about our mobile app. We have a new mobile app that we'll be launching here in the next couple weeks, and we're going to talk about it next month on our lunch and learn. And it's a reporting tool, so people can report things that are happening in their community, around shale gas development, maybe environmental issues that you see going on. You can go ahead and report it, and in the background we will also let you know, okay, so you reported to us, but who is the regulatory agency that you should be reporting this to? And then, because of this, the data that's collected with this app, we'll be able to give people next steps on how to advocate for themselves. So thank you, John, for being with us today. Always a pleasure to have you with us. And and I guess the takeaway: take action on our website, on our webpage. Share it with folks, because we want to spread the word far and wide. And look out for this product when you're in the store, because it's not a product you want to have in your home. So thank you so much, John.
You're welcome. And again, contact your congressmen and senators from your state with regard to the legislation that would allow products like this and road brining and other things, because this stuff has to be dealt with appropriately.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon.